Hey everyone, welcome to today's episode. Again, Kali. Hey everyone. No, wait, oh God, you're not leaving me. Okay. Hi everyone, and welcome to today's episode. Thank you for everyone that has made it this far with me. This is going to be episode number 5. I really appreciate everybody who has listened, who has tuned in, who has liked the videos on Instagram, who has engaged with the stories. I just really want to take this time, this short little 30 seconds to just really tell you that I appreciate you and I hope that something, even if it's small, it's helped you along your journey of healing. Speaking of the Instagram, if you're not already following, the Instagram is at Survive Heartbreak. Our YouTube is How to Survive Heartbreak. And our Spotify is also the at How to Survive Heartbreak. So go follow those if you can. And with that being said, let's start with today's episode. So, if you have been following the podcast for thus far, like these 5 episodes, you're going to start noticing kind of a little bit of a pattern. Um, I've built this podcast, I structured like the topics, I guess, in a way that if you are going through it, like if you're going through heartbreak, if you just broke up with, someone important in your life, if you had a pet die, if you lost your job, whatever it may be, you could literally click on this podcast and go step by step, episode by episode, and start a journey of, healing and moving upward. So that's kind of the goal with this podcast. That being said, episode 5 is one that is close to my heart. The next few episodes, I brought on a lot of guests on the first few episodes, but I think in the next, like in the following weeks, I'm going to be doing some more on my own just because I do want a little bit more of the mic time for me. And also because I have some things to share low key and I want to talk a little bit more from my heart. Today's episode is called Life is Ambiguous. And this is something that has taken me a while to learn. Um, I have a really good friend. I won't name her because I think that was kind of a personal post, but she posted on Facebook and her post was basically just like talking about her life and her breakup with um, her husband at the time, and it wasn't like a sad post. This is what was crazy. It was like kind of like an uplifting post. She was just talking about how, life is non-binary is the way that she put it. And the way I'm naming this podcast is that life is ambiguous. What do I mean by that? It's not so polarized. Like a lot of the times, and I'll go more into this in a second, but a lot of the times when we view, life or yeah, just like our lives, we view them so black and white. We're like, okay, I had a pet die, so life is black at this moment. Or I just got promoted at my job. I'm living in a white moment of my life. And the reality is that most of the time, life is not so black and white. At least it boils down to perception. Yeah, perception, right? So I want everybody to take a second to think back to a time that was the hardest time in their lives or like was the most challenging time. Just think about that for a second while I take a little sippy sip of my tea. Okay. Now that you have that mental image, I want you to remember what you were feeling during the time, if you can remember. I know it could be hard, but I personally, when I was thinking back in these moments, I have found that 80 or 90% of these moments, if not all of them, like that I was living there was a hard time in my life that I was living like a difficult time in my life was also simultaneously like a very happy time in my life. I was living some of the most like spiritual experiences that I've had. I just had like random encounters with strangers. I had like these small little like intimate moments to myself in the car with God, like so many different things that were just so happy. And it's crazy because it's like, how could I have been living the hardest time of my life and also have these moments of like happiness and grace and love? like how can that coexist, you know? And that's kind of what I want to talk about today, the fact that they can coexist. Joy and grief can coexist. Being grateful or gratitude and grieving can coexist. Feeling loved and feeling lonely can coexist. Feeling hopeful and feeling hurt can coexist. Life is not so black and white. Now, why is that important? Why is that important, you may ask? Well, let me tell you. I will tell you why. Because happiness is, and I know this is a cliche little saying, but I'm still going to say it. Happiness is a journey, it's not a destination. A lot of the times we're like, when I'm happy, I'm going to do this. When I'm happy, I'm going to do that. But we have to remember that in our journey, as we're moving through this spiritual journey, we're going to encounter moments of happiness and moments of sadness, and sometimes both. You know, just those two truths can coexist at the same time. You can be happy and sad at the same time, and that's okay. I think that when we try to stick things into a box, and when we say, like, everything has since I'm like living a sad time in my life right now, everything's going to be sad. And then when you live like happy moments, you like forget about them, or you just like shy away from being grateful at that time, because you're like so hyper focused on that you're living a sad time of your life, right? Or vice versa, you're living such a happy time in your life and you're like, oh my gosh, everything is happy, but then you kind of fall into like this toxic positivity that you can't acknowledge the bad, like the bad in your life. Simultaneously, when you're living these happy moments and you refuse to acknowledge like the bad in that you're also living, that's where we learn our lessons. That's when we have like the biggest lessons are found in failures, right? We talked about that last episode. So it's just super important to be able to have that duality and hold space for both of those complexities of life. Why do I say that? I want to talk a little bit about getting bitter.
He needs some milk.
Bruh. I meant to say getting better and not bitter. I posted a little story on my Instagram. I posted that today, and this is future me editing, and I just decided I'd show you guys the video instead. So here's the video. Okay, so like when I went through my divorce, had a lot of people like ask me like, how did you get through that? Or not really like ask me, but I could just tell that they were like in shock, and my mom told me like that some people never really recover from that. Like they go through a divorce and they never really recover. And there's other people that go through like trauma and just go through really difficult things in their life and they just get stuck. Okay? That's what I'm trying to say. They get stuck in this place of like sadness and misery and I don't even know, like all this negativity. And they just live there in that little box the rest of their lives. And bruh, I knew very early on that I could never do that. Like I could never just stay stuck like that. I was gonna do like whatever it took for me to get out of that. I've done door-to-door sales for a really long time, and I bump into people day in and day out. I'm talking to people from Kansas City, where I'm at right now, and I've sold in Georgia and California and just like all over the country. And I meet a lot of people and I have conversations with them, sometimes deep conversations when I'm waiting on something or just simply, making conversation. And I have met people that you walk into their house, and this specific lady comes to mind. She had like a whole thing set up for her son. It was like pictures. It was like this huge mural on the wall of her son, and then she had like his graduation outfit like laid out next to it, and she had like balloons, and she had this, and I was like, "Oh, was it your son's birthday?" And I kind of stuck my foot in my mouth at that moment because she's like, no, he actually passed away. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry to hear that. And and I was like, did you guys just recently have the funeral or something? I can't remember. I said something along those lines. And she was like, no, no, he died in like, you know, 7 or 8 years ago. 7 or 8 years ago, ma'am, like I'm not trying to undermine her pain, you know, like yes, probably was life shattering for her to have her son die, but there's a point where you kind of have to move forward. Not because that loss didn't or that person didn't matter, not because that person wasn't something special in your life, but because you are also a special person and you also matter. And the best way that you can honor that person is by living a beautiful life and continuing forward. That's heavy. Take a moment to sit with that because I felt it, you know. It is difficult. And, you know, next episode, that's actually what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about forgiveness and letting go. And that's going to be a really heavy episode as well. But I want to leave room for the idea that by moving forward and getting better, we we are able to move out of that bitterness. Staying stuck in a place with a negative feeling like anger or sadness or resentment or whatever it may be, fill in the blank, keeps you stuck in this minutia. And people stay stuck there for years and years and years. And going back to what I was talking about my story on Instagram, that's what I said in that memory. I said, I made a decision at one point that there was no way in heck that that was going to be me. That lady that I met, that, you know, she had the mural and stuff, there was no way in heck that that was going to be me. I, you were not going to find me 10 years, 15 years down the road, still stuck on my divorce or still stuck on the heartbreaks that I've had, the losses that I've experienced, the, you know, lost opportunities, the regret, whatever you want to call it. You you could not catch me. Like that could never be me is what I'm saying. And I don't mean that in a derogatory or judgmental way. I just you have to make a decision at one point. Like, I am going to move through this. I'm going to take a certain amount of time. I don't know how much time that's going to be because I don't like the pressure of putting like it's going to be like a month or 2 months or 2 years, whatever. Like, I don't give myself that pressure. I've always said this. It either takes me 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, and that's pretty much like the most time that I've taken to get over someone or something. But everybody's different. And you take your time and then you need to move forward. You need to start getting better. Okay, so before closing this episode, um, I remember I'm going to share kind of a story with you guys. So I remember this was back in 2018. I had just gone through my divorce or my separation. I was like pretty certain that you know, I was going to separate at that point, and I remember sitting in on my room floor crying and just feeling like really terrible and being kind of angry at myself because I was like, why the hell, excuse my French, why the hell am I focused on being such a, like, on trying to be a good person? Why am I being kind? And why am I, like, you know, trying to forgive others and trying to do this and go out of my way to be a kind person and, like, make others not feel alone and, you know, whatever it may be the case, when no one seems to have the same agenda. Nobody else seems to have the same concerns. Everybody just seems to be fending for themselves type. And I remember being angry in that moment and just feeling like almost like an overwhelming sense of bitterness in that moment. And it must have been God or something, but in that moment my dad will like slip things under my door randomly. He'll put like little candies or little notes and random stuff under my door. And in that moment he like slid a paper under my door, and I was like, what the heck? So I went and I grabbed it. And when I picked up the paper, it was this. This was what was written on it. It says, or it reads, people are often unreasonable, illogical, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. The good that you do today, people will often forget tomorrow. Do good anyway. If you are successful, you will win false friends and true enemies. Succeed anyway. What you spend years building may be destroyed overnight. Build anyway. If you are kind, people will accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you find serenity and happiness, they may be jealous. Be happy anyway. Give the world your best. Give the world the best you have, and it may never be enough. Give your best anyway. Because in the end, it was never between you and them. Gosh, you guys, if I could tell you what I felt in that moment, like that was a defining moment for me in my life. I think in that moment I realized that I had to make a choice on the person that I wanted to become. I wasn't going to allow the ugly, hurtful, cruel things that people have done to me to define who I am moving forward, like from that moment moving forward. If I allowed like what people did or have done to me to make me angry and like use that as an excuse to become just like them, then they would have already won. They've already like yeah, they've already won. I became just like them. But making that decision on who I want to be has grounded me in times when that decision hasn't been so clear and easy and cut, like so easy, such an easy decision. Whenever there's a fork in the road, it's an easy decision because I know who I am and I know who I want to be. That's the better answer. I know who I want to be. And I think a lot of people, and I'll talk about this later in another episode, but I think a lot of people look up to me because of my confidence and because of, um, yeah, just like the stance that I have. And I think people don't realize that that comes from a place of just knowing who I am. And when I say I know who I am, it means that I have made decisions, I have made choices, and they have not always been easy choices, you know? Sometimes they take a few trial and error before I solidify that who I want to be for sure. Sometimes it takes doing the complete opposite to figure out that's not where I want to be, that's not who I want to be, to then know for sure this is who I want to be. And I think, or I invite every single one of you guys that are watching that have made it through the episode to ask yourself the same question. Who do I want to be? For a long time, I had that written in my on my mirror in my room. It was just simple, who do you want to be? And it actually came from this song by Ali and AJ. And I ask myself, who do I wanna be? Basically, when she said that, I was driving and I was driving to Guatemala at the time. I mean, not all the way to Guatemala. I was driving to Salt Lake to catch a plane to go to Guatemala. And it was like a very pivotal time in my life because I had just broken up with an ex that I really loved, and my identity was shaken at that time. And so when I listened to those words, it just really made me think, who the heck do I want to be? I can be anyone I want right now. I'm not a tree. I can literally pick myself up and be whoever I decide to be. If I want to be like this emo, a black lipstick, like skinny eyebrows girl from here on forward, I can do that. If I want to be, this like hippie, like, I don't know, um, tattoos and like piercings like everywhere, I could do that. I could be whoever I want to be at that moment. And I made a decision, you guys. I made a freaking decision on the person that I want to be. I want to be a good person. I want to be a kind person. I want to be a forgiving person. I want to be a loving person, a caring person. And it's almost like the universe has been like, oh, you say you want to be a caring person? Then let me send you a challenge or a trial or something to see if that's really who you want to be. And it challenges those things that I say, that I want to be a kind person, an accountable person, whatever. So I want to bring up that challenge again, you guys. Ask yourself, take a moment to just look in the mirror and just ask yourself, who do I want to be today? Not yesterday, not 2 days ago, not even an hour ago. Who do I want to be today? And make that decision moving forward. It can be anything. If you want to be like a bitter, I mean, don't do that, but if you really wanted to do that, if you wanted to be a bitter person, fine, but make a decision. And I'm going to tell you why. Because the moment that you make a decision, the quicker you make a decision on that you want to be that bitter person, the quicker you'll realize that that's not where it's at. That it's better to be on the other side of things. So make a decision. Ask yourself, who do I want to be? If you guys are watching this with me all the way through to this point, I know you have it in you to heal. I want you to know that it is possible to heal. It's possible to love after heartbreak. I Just to close this episode, I remember this time that, and I wish I had like my phone with me so I could read it to you guys directly, but I wrote my ex a letter one time, and I said something to him. I told him that I closed my heart off for a bit of time because I was scared and sad and bitter at life. I went through that phase. And in that time, I realized that I had not only closed myself romantically, but I had also closed myself to all the love that the universe has to give me. I I realized that when I opened up my heart again, because when I was able to open up my heart again, I realized what I was missing out on. It was more than just romantic love. It was love for animals, love for food, love for little things like the stars, um, hearing a dog bark, love for little things like tea, and just the love you feel in your heart when you know that the universe or God or whatever you may believe in loves you. And I want to invite you guys to make that decision of getting better and not bitter. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for listening to this episode, and I appreciate everybody's support and love and unity and messages that I've received. Just to recap, if you haven't already followed the Instagram, it's at Survive Heartbreak, and the YouTube is How to Survive Heartbreak, as well as the Spotify is also at How to Survive Heartbreak. You can listen to it there or watch it on YouTube if you're watching it now. But I love you guys so, so, so much, and thank you so much for being here. And remember, we heal and not harden. Bye, guys.